Hello, Willingdon young adults. It's great to be with you all again. And we're continuing on in our series on relationships. And today I have my good friends Nathan and Brittany here to talk about dating. Hey guys, good to have you.
Thank you.
Awesome. And so Nathan and Brittany, a lot of you might know them. They've been around our community for a while. And exciting news, they're currently engaged. But they have had a long history of dating experience that they're going to be sharing with us today, just to help us kind of wrap our brains around what does healthy dating look like, and what are some of the highs and the lows of their relationship with each other. And so with that being said, why don't we just get rolling here, and I'd love to hear about and want you to share with the community how the two of you met each other.
Okay, I'll take this one. We met in grade 6 at a youth retreat, and our mutual friend introduced us and told us that we should play some Minecraft together. Never happened, but we became really good friends, and then into high school in grade 11, then that same friend told Nathan that, hey, maybe you should date Brittany, and then we did.
So wait, I'm curious. Did they introduce you in grade 6 to set you guys up, or
no, not at
just
all.
to be friends?
We were laying on the ground and we needed to get Bibles, and she said, "I know a guy for that," and Nathan obediently got us Bibles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then she said you should play Minecraft.
Yeah.
Okay. But it wasn't until grade 11 that you guys reconnected somehow, or were you just friends the entire time?
No, I liked him a lot, throughout that whole time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
and we were good friends all throughout, from grade 6 to grade 11. And then that same friend was like, "Oh, Nathan, have you ever considered liking or dating Brittany?" And
he finally noticed me.
Oh, wow. So that entire time, Brittany liked you. Was there reciprocation, or were you just
we were just good friends.
Nice.
Yeah.
Classic friend zone.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. So you guys have a fairly long history, knowing each other since you were like 12 years old or 11 years old.
Yeah.
And then you started dating in grade 11. And so how did that come about? After being friends for like 5 years, what kind of changed that so that you wanted to start dating?
Well, we were still really good friends, so we were just still talking a lot, and then I guess just started talking more once I started thinking about it.
And I made the first move when she said, "Hey, Brittany, I think Nathan might like you." He mentioned the conversation I had with him a few weeks later. So then I texted him that day, and I remember it was after church. And then I texted him, and then we kept talking a lot after that. We were talking before then, but then I was much more intentional with it afterwards. Yeah.
Nice. So your first move was just reaching out to him and being like, "Hey, let's talk."
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like that. I didn't say, "Hey, let's talk." I just started texting more.
See, when I think first move, I think of the classic
Nice.
one of those.
Planting seeds in his head.
That's awesome. Cool. So you guys have been dating, you guys were dating for how many years before you got engaged?
Just celebrated our 4th anniversary officially.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we were kind of not officially dating, but dating exclusively for 9 or 10 months, 9 months, something like that.
Okay.
So 4 years and 9 months.
Cool. So that's even an interesting thing. It might be worth unpacking that, because I think a lot of people are used to that, where people don't really want to put a label on their relationship these days. It's kind of like, "Oh, you guys are dating." No, we're not dating. We're just going on dates and hanging out with each other all the time. You're like, "Oh, well," and some people want, the security of being like, "No, you're my boyfriend or girlfriend." And other people don't want that, but still want to date. So how did that work for you guys? Was that just okay for both of you, or was it sort of this process of warming up to the idea of "Oh, okay, maybe now you can be my boyfriend or girlfriend"?
I guess it was kind of like that, kind of warming up to it, but we were both in grade 11, and I technically wasn't allowed to date, according to my mom, till after high school.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you held hands and you went out on movie dates or walks or dinners?
No, we were an
'Cause you couldn't
unofficial.
drive.
No, we were an unofficial couple, not really by choice. I don't think. It just happened to be "Oh, it's been a long time now," and I thought it was because, and we both thought it was because he wasn't allowed to date. But then at one point he heard his mom call me his girlfriend, and he was like, oh wait, why did you call her my girlfriend? And she's like, I thought you just didn't listen to me. But yeah, and then after that, then we.
But she did approve. My
She
mom
did approve.
it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Cool.
and then he asked me officially 9 months later after we started talking.
And did that feel like a big deal for you? Be like, oh, he officially asked me now. Or was it kind of like, well, of course, we're already dating.
Yeah, it felt like a big enough. I don't know. I didn't even get used to the idea of like calling him my girlfriend. I mean, calling him my boyfriend until like very like I guess not recently, but like
Much later.
much later. So it wasn't
Okay.
even like a big shock, I guess, because I wasn't used to it yet.
So for people in our community who are maybe in that kind of ambiguous zone where they're with somebody, they're like, you know, going on dates regularly or hanging out with someone regularly, and they don't really know what to make of it or what to do about it, would you have any encouragement from your experience on like, should you initiate that conversation or should you just kind of let it be and let it unfold organically?
I always advise, like, because people have asked me about that before, I always tell them, like, I don't advise to prolong that stage. Like, I think it's good to have, like, a dating exclusively period and then have a specific conversation where you decide to be official.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that period shouldn't be too long because it's good to be in an official relationship so you can have like set boundaries, set like goals and values, and like you can have some more serious conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of awkward to have if you're kind of like, yeah, but you're still like technically my friend. Yeah.
Right. What would you say to that, Nathan?
I agree. I think you should definitely have that conversation, and that shouldn't go on too long because then it's just kind of ambiguous and you don't really know what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do if you don't communicate with each other and make a decision.
So is 9 months too long?
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay. What would be like a healthy timeline? Not that you can like make a science out of a relationship, but clearly 9 months is like something
That's
about
kinda-
that.
Yeah, longer. That's probably longer than a lot of relationships, but I think 9 months is too long. But we were also in high school, so it's like a little different. I think if you're a little older, as young adults, like if we started dating now and doing that, 9 months is probably way too long.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like
A few months.
3 months, like max kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's-
Before you have a conversation about that, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise you might scare them away, but you also want to have that soon enough.
So not on the second date.
No, third maybe.
Yeah. You hear that, guys? 3 months is the perfect timeline.
Oh,
coming
no.
up.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Just kidding. But no, that's really helpful because again, I think something that really marks our generation. You guys are Gen Z, I'm millennial, but we're only 5, 6, 7 years apart. And non-committal is something that very much marks our generation. That's like, you know, open relationships. Like we'll get into more of that stuff later where like, oh, I don't just have one boyfriend or girlfriend, I have multiple people that I'm dating and, you know, doing stuff with. That's very common these days. And I think for people in our community and, you know, others watching, there's that question when you're with someone and you want to have that clarity, but they just keep pushing that conversation off. They're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that's too far, that's too whatever. Would you say that, you know, just go with the flow in a situation like that? Or would you say that if the person's not willing to have that clarifying conversation that maybe they're not worth being with? What would your guys' take on that be?
I think at a certain point you gotta have that conversation, and if they're not willing to have that conversation, it's probably not the right person. If you want to have that conversation and they're not willing to, I don't think it'll work out. But
Yeah.
you never know.
I think that like, well, for us, and like I talked about this even before, like when I was still planting seeds, I was like, hey,
I
so
love
like,
that.
what do you, yeah, pretty much. I was like, I don't know, somehow I, not very discreetly, but he didn't think anything of it, said something along the lines of like, what do you think the purpose of dating is for? And we both mutually decided, or both mutually said on our own that we think the purpose of dating is for marriage eventually. So then I think going into a relationship, we kind of already at least I did. I decided that I think I would want to marry him. Like
I agree.
yeah. And I tell
Yeah.
people that, especially if you're friends first, that when you think about dating somebody, you should feel that it could work. Like you should see that it could work rather than you should go into a relationship wanting to see if it'll work. Like you should be able to see it, I think. And so I feel like having a conversation is good, and you should be comfortable with having that. I don't know if that really answered the question, but that's like something that I
Well,
found
I
out.
think you also bring up a really interesting point, and this is something that's unique to Christian dating relationships, which, is a very small segment of our population, but for our community of people, that's what we're trying to do, is be, godly and faithful to our Christian values in dating. And this whole concept of dating for the purpose of marriage, I find that, for a lot of people that can get kind of taken to an extreme where it's like, unless I know I'm going to marry this person, or unless I know that I want to marry this person, I can't date them.
Yeah.
And it's almost like dating becomes engagement, pretty much, because you're saying like, no, this is a person I want to marry, so I'm going to date you now. And there's this whole question about like, well, do you need to be that certain before, if dating leads to marriage? Like, does it have to be that, or can it be a lot more open-ended, that it's like, well, they're a nice person, they believe in God, I'm attracted to them, what the heck, let's date for a bit and see what happens. Like, can you be that kind of nonchalant and still have that in the back of your mind that you're dating for the purpose of marriage someday?
I think so. Like, I think if you're obsessed with the idea of like, oh, I have to find the one like all the time, then you're not going to find the person. You're going to scare away everyone that you meet. And that's where the whole like, all the memes on subtle Christian trait comes from, where it's like,
That's awesome.
on the second date, he has like a ring or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's like important to be open-minded and to like want, just like, yeah, to be open-minded and to be, I guess, yeah, go with the flow, but also to be intentional and to have some sort of purpose to your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you want to have an end goal in mind, but not necessarily everybody you date you will marry, because a lot of like dating relationships end, and that's just how it works. But you have to go into the relationship seeing if you want to marry them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in my opinion.
Yeah, basically like, if you're confident that that person probably could never be your future spouse,
Yeah.
no
But
matter
they're
how...
a fun time.
Yeah, exactly. But,
Probably not.
they're attractive enough and cool enough to make it happen. It's like, no, I don't care how much they appeal to you, that's just probably not wise. But if you think there's like a shred of hope that, like, hey, maybe something could happen, but I don't want to think that far ahead, they have at least the shared values, the shared faith, like, let's just give it a shot.
Yeah.
I remember a really wise person, because there were many, many years where I didn't date anyone at all through my whole young adulthood. And a wise person spoke into my life and said, Jordan, you should just date some people to learn how to treat women well on a date. And I was like, what do you mean? I already know how to treat women well. But clearly there's a lot to learn just by dating, because even for you guys, 4 years of dating before engagement, did you learn how to perfectly treat each other well in those 4 years, or are there still some things you could work on?
I'm always learning on the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always do my best, and we always do our best to treat each other as well as possible, but we're never perfect, and we're always learning how to treat each other best.
Yeah.
Yeah, ditto.
What you said.
Cool. Well, hey, let's move on to a question I'd love to ask the two of you, or either one of you can answer, but what has been one of the most rewarding aspects of your dating relationship?
In my experience, I found that we make each other better, and we complement each other well. So, for example, I'm a little bit less outgoing than Brittany, but then, so I'm more likely to say no to newer things. But then since she knows me well and knows what I like and don't like, she'll like encourage me to do something, even if I'm not necessarily entirely comfortable with it, but she knows I'll enjoy it, or if it'll be good for me. But if things that I don't really want to do that she knows aren't great for me or that I won't enjoy, she won't push it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
I think for myself, for in the relationship, I found it, I don't know if rewarding is the word, but yeah, in a way that he makes me better is like helping me with my anxiety and like helping me with what's the word? My like insecurities and things like that. Like it's helpful to have a person to talk through things, and it's always helpful to have somebody that knows you and is able, like, knows how to calm you down and yeah, talk things through. There's always like friends and things like that, but having a significant other is a different type of relationship.
Cool. So basically you find that you both have strengths that help in the other person's areas of weakness, and you guys kind of allow each other to strengthen each other basically in that way.
Yeah, I'm a very high stress person, and he's a very, very low stress person.
Okay, nice.
So it works out.
Yeah.
Well, so what would have happened if you were both really high stress people?
We would just overthink everything and just
Yeah.
implode.
Yeah.
And what if you were both super low stress people?
We'd get nothing done.
Yeah.
Or just like not care about anything.
Yeah.
I can just imagine
Yeah.
you both apart from each other now, just like, wow, Nathan does nothing, Brittany's imploding, like it's a good
Pretty
thing
much.
that you guys are helping each other. That's awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. And kind of, conversely, what have been some of the biggest areas of challenge in your guys' dating relationship?
I think one of the biggest challenges is like just learning how to be with somebody else, like whether that's like in how he communicates or like how I communicate, and learning like what sort of like voice, like what tone of voice makes me, I don't know, upset or something like that, or what little things bother him, or what little things bother me, like learning how to make how I live and how he live complement each other. Like our personalities are often complementary, but there's always going to be some things that conflict with each other. So I feel like just learning to be with another person. And another thing is, I guess along with that is like being with another person, also learning and realizing when we're starting to like worship each other, and make sure that when that comes about, like, and you realize, oh, I'm actually like putting our relationship, putting Nathan on a pedestal, when I should be making sure that I focus on other things, and that will in turn benefit our relationship. So like just balancing everything, I guess, might have been the biggest challenge, but even then I don't feel like we've had like a huge like, I don't know,
Yeah.
fight or anything.
Yeah, it's been good. It's a learning experience, like learning to care for another person, because we're not just looking out for ourselves anymore. If you're dating somebody, you gotta take care of the other person too, and do everything in your power to take care of them too. So it's been fun, but it's also a challenge at times.
It's also hard, like we're long distance now, so it's obviously like not right now, he's here,
Wait a second.
Yeah.
he's here.
Is that actually Nathan?
But yeah, so like, I mean, he leaves in 2 days, but that's also been a challenge, but I feel like part of it is of him being away. Like more of the challenge is not so much like he's not physically here with me, but it's like, how do I take care of him? How does he take care of me while he's away? So I feel like that's,
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's so beautiful that you allow it to make you more selfless rather than. So two things come up that I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on. Maybe for starters, we'll talk about the comment you made about worshiping, because I feel like for so many people in our culture, we kind of have this like separate or dichotomized view of relationships where either like the other person doesn't matter at all, and it's just all about your own personal gratification, and so, all the, sexual issues that come up with that. But then there's the whole like future ultimate spouse, future ultimate lover, where like you're not complete until you're with the right person, until you're married or with someone that loves you and that you love. And you begin to worship this idol of romance or relationship. And so just how you brought up that comment, Brittany, how did that show up in your guys' relationship, this whole, be careful not to worship each other. Because I think that's, I presented it in very extreme ways so that people could understand, but I think it also shows up a lot more subtly and maybe more sinister than an outright obsession with someone.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of our relationship, we kind of were like, we don't want to be that couple, that oh my
always
gosh.
on each other.
Yeah, they're that couple.
We all know that couple.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to name names, but anyways, yeah. So that's again the extreme. You don't want to be physically or emotionally all over them, obsessed with them, kind of thing. So we kind of were trying to be very intentional in that way. I guess this will come up in a question later, but yeah. So we try really hard to be present when we're in group settings, so that we know we're a couple. We don't need to prove to anybody else that we're a couple in group settings. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to just the two of us, we try to be very self-aware, individually, and then also watch out for the other person. So when we see that the other person is getting into their head or is I don't know, I don't want to say too needy, but it's depending on them, on the other person too much. You gotta have real conversations where it's just pray, listen to some worship music, and just take a step back, kind of thing. Because yeah, he's not always there for me, but God is. He's not always
Sunday
available.
School,
he's not always available
plus.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then
So really, it is kind of you use the word self-awareness.
that's
kind of
a
heart
one
check.
of the biggest things. Yeah, and self-awareness and being aware of the other person too.
Yeah.
And what's going on.
Is my emotional, mental, relational stability and contentment dependent on my boyfriend or girlfriend, or is it dependent on my relationship with God? And when you see it starting to become too dependent on them, where it's oh, they said something I didn't like, and now my whole day is shot, and I just don't want to talk to anyone because you're oh, maybe you're depending too much on your significant other.
Yeah, and I think us doing long distance has kind of tested us in that way, because we're both in school doing our programs and it's really busy, and being on a 3-hour time difference, we're not always available to be there for each other.
Yeah.
So that's really tested us and made us have to focus more on God, because we can't depend on each other as much.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Long distance has some benefits apparently, depending on how you approach it.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And another thing that came up that I want to quickly touch on was this whole consumer aspect of relationships. That's it's all about how the relationship benefits you, and we're kind of in the relationship market looking for what we get from it, whereas for yourselves you had this huge emphasis on how can I serve, how can I bless, how can I communicate better. So for people right now in our community that are out on the hunt, they're looking for a relationship. I just couldn't help but phrase it that way. But they're looking for a relationship. With dating apps and the culture around us, there's just so much consumerism in the dating world. What would you want to speak into that situation? And if you needed me to refine it a bit more for you, I can, but even just on a general level, when people approach dating with a consumer mindset, in your guys' experience of it, what would you want to say to those people who are just looking for how it benefits them?
It's kind of hard for me to speak into it that way, because that's not really how I approached it, because Brittany kind of just fell into my lap. We were already friends.
So we should all pray for that we have a Brittany of sorts.
That just throws yourself at.
I want you.
Yeah, because we were already friends for a while, so I wasn't looking for a relationship and looking oh, I need a girlfriend to validate myself, whatever. I wasn't looking actively, and then we were just friends, and the situation presented itself. So it's a little different for me in my experience, but maybe you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I feel well, one time I asked him, I was besides communication, what is your biggest piece of relationship advice? And he said, as cheesy as it is, he said real love, genuinely caring for the other person and wanting what's best for that person. And that'll be the most fulfilling type of relationship that you can have. That's the most like long-lasting relationship, I feel like that can occur is like just genuinely caring about the other person and wanting what's best for them will help your relationship long term. So I feel like it's you can't really go into it being like, I'm gonna have real love, I'm gonna like make sure I like genuinely love the person. Like it's hard, but I feel like that's what has helped us in terms of like making like trying to keep our mindset like really focused on like what's best for the other person.
Yeah, that's awesome. Genuine love feels like maybe it's hard to come by these days.
Yeah, sorry, that's not really a great piece of advice.
I think there's a lot there to reflect on for sure.
Yeah.
That's really good. What's a decision that you guys made that maybe you look back on and regret or wish you had done it differently?
I don't think we really regret anything. At least I don't, because
Hashtag no regrets.
no regrets. Yeah, because like, I mean, we haven't had any like huge mistakes or anything life changing, but anything that we have gone through, it's like it's all a learning experience, and it's made us love each other better. Like maybe I think 1 year
I was gonna can I tell?
Sure. I think 1 year was her birthday, and it's like we were pretty early in the relationship, and then she was like, "Oh, I don't really want anything for my birthday." And obviously, I'm a guy, so I'm like pretty dumb. I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then we just kind of didn't really do that much, and then she was sad, and I was like, "I don't understand." But then, like, obviously, I don't regret that because now it's a learning experience. Now I know what to expect,
And
and
it's such a funny story. Like he asked, "What do you want for your birthday?" "Oh, I don't need anything," and then he didn't get me anything, and I was sad, and he was so confused. He's like,
Yeah.
"Why are you sad? You told me you don't want anything."
Yeah, but now I know, and now I learned from it.
Yeah, totally. That's good. And that's awesome. No regrets. That's a pretty sweet place to be.
Yeah, I think like maybe one thing that if I were to go back and were to tell myself or like tell somebody else in like an early dating situation themselves, like something that I would remind them of is like your person or like the person you're dating is not you. So like you can't necessarily make decisions for them and assume that they're just going to be okay with that. And like when we decided when we were like very intentional, like we don't want to be that couple, when we went on youth retreats and like church retreats, then I would like overcompensate, kind of would like ignore him, kind of didn't sit next to him or whatever. And then like after he'd be sad, and I'm like, why are you sad? But anyways, yeah, so like I would just make the decision in my head, like, oh, like you don't need to be around him, like you can be with your friends or whatever, but quality time's one of his main love languages and it's not really mine, so you gotta make sure that you're aware of what the other person needs as well as your own, not just like, assuming. So I think that's something that I would like advise maybe like to my younger self or to somebody else in that similar situation, but not something that I would change because again, that's something else that we've learned from.
Yeah. No, that's big. And it kind of goes back to that communication piece. You're just going off of your assumption, which you assume you agreed on, but then you're like, oh wait, we see it differently, or we go about it differently.
Yeah.
So, nice. What's a decision that you guys made that you reflect on that you're really glad that you made that decision and followed through with it and that it paid off well for you?
Optometry school. So then early on into our relationship, that kind of gave us like kind of direction, like how I can help him remember to focus in school and, I don't know, study and applications and just like reminding him of deadlines because like he'll do the work, but sometimes it's just like hard to get to it. But then for me, it's like easy to plan and like make a study schedule and all these things. So like I think having goals and having like a kind of a long-term plan, but not setting out every step was something that we kind of mutually agreed on and I don't know, had.
Yeah, and then having like kind of an idea of what we wanted for our future, and for me in my school, it wasn't totally unexpected that I'm moving away for school. So then we kind of knew it was coming in our relationship, and we were kind of a little bit more ready for it.
Yeah.
I think that really helped.
How long did you have between when you decided you're going to do that and then when you now moved to Boston?
Well, I've known I wanted to do it for a long time. I just didn't know which school I'd get into, where I would want to go or where I'd move to. But I guess I found out in March that I was going to move to Boston, and then I left in August. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I found out in September how far Boston was from here. I was like, oh, the States. I drive down to Bellingham like every other weekend sometimes. And then I'm like on Google Maps, I'm like, where is it? I'm pinching, and it's like all the way on the other coast.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like, oh, East Coast. Wow,
Yeah.
different coast.
East is definitely far from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you go down to Bellingham, that's a whole other, we'll do a separate
Oh, that
interview
the
about
Costco
that.
is so much better over there.
Actually,
Way better. I mean, not so much with the exchange anymore. Better samples.
okay.
Yeah.
This is good. I'm learning from this.
Not during COVID though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
samples.
I'll have to wait for that.
No point.
Nice. No, that's really, and I think, for yourselves, like, that's a huge decision. And I'm sure it might have been met with different perspectives. Or did you find that everyone was just, like, completely supportive and on board with you as you're like, hey guys, Nathan's gonna move away, we're gonna get engaged, but delay our wedding for a while? Like, was it something you worked through with other people, or just kind of like made the decision and had the support of others around you?
Well, pretty early in the relationship, Brittany was asking her dad about like where he thinks his kids will be in like 5 or 10 years. But then he was just like a little bit unsure because we were just started dating at the time, maybe a year into the relationship. And he was just like, oh, it depends on Nathan. Like, that's just something to kind of watch out for, where if I go to grad school, where I go. So like, we all kind of knew it was coming, her parents and my parents, but they've always supported us and like kind of supported us in what we wanted to do. But we always kind of had a loose plan.
Yeah. I think like
Yeah.
some people have been like, what, you're letting him go away? Like, whatever, like, you're letting him leave? But again, like, it
Because it's your job to control him.
pretty much. And like,
That's how a good
he just
relationship
doesn't
works.
listen. No, like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really see it like that. It's just like, it was gonna happen. That's what we've always known. And we didn't like, it wasn't like a delay of a wedding or anything like that. That was just kind of like, our goal was so that we can save and like financially, and like that's like just when the timeline was gonna work and things like that. So nothing really changed suddenly in the past 4 years like that we've been dating or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of talked about openly, you processed it, and you kind of already knew it was coming to an extent.
Yeah.
Maybe not Boston being on the East Coast, but
Yeah.
Can't
And then
drive
the
down
East
there every
Coast
second
apparently
weekend.
being so far,
yeah.
that was a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Can't drive there in an hour. What the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Brad was like, let's road trip. I was like,
48-hour
that's
drive.
so
48
long. I thought it was longer.
That
I don't
was
know.
two days.
It's a long time.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't doubt if it was.
I don't even like driving to
long.
Langley, so
Yeah. Classic Burnaby folk.
yeah.
I'm from Langley, so anyways.
I go to school in Langley too. Yeah.
Oh really? Right. Trinity.
Yeah.
Just down the road from where I grew up. Now, I have another question, but I wanted to read it out because it's long and it's, it gets into a lot of really technical issues that I would just love to hear your guys' thoughts on, especially I am older than you guys, and so some of these things started becoming prominent post-high school for me, like quite a bit post-high school. And I feel like you kind of grew up when this was already going on and normal. So basically I'll read out the question. When it comes to things like what's considered appropriate in dating relationships and versus inappropriate, so when it comes to things like sexting, I mean, back in high school we had like flip phones, so sexting was not even fun if you could do it. Sexting, open relationships, pornography, sexual activity before marriage or outside of marriage, and other things that the culture says are good and promotes, and actually, like in all the media and stuff that we intake, these things are like valued as things that young people should pursue or engage in. How did you two come with your values to each other and establish what you think are healthy boundaries for a godly dating relationship in the mix of that kind of cultural milieu?
Well, we both kind of grew up in churches, and we both grew up in similar family situations, so we had a similar upbringing. So some things didn't have to be explicitly said between us, but I think it is really important to have those kind of conversations and set boundaries. But Yeah.
and remind each other.
Yeah. But yeah, early in the relationship, we both decided that we wanted to save ourselves for marriage, and that we both agreed on that. And I think having that conversation was really important, especially really early, or else you can get carried away pretty easily.
Yeah, I think also like knowing your other person's like weakness, or like where it's easy for them to fall into temptation, or things like that, so that you can be strong and like prepared in that kind of situation. And then also having people in your life that like can be good role models, and like you can talk to them about things has helped us. So
like role models that were like married couples, or
like we have we for a little bit we talked to Trevor and Melissa for a little bit, like the old they are not old, but he was previously the Wellington Young Adults pastor, and we didn't talk to them like a lot, like we didn't have like an extensive mentorship or anything like that, but it was like something that we could go to talk to them and like be like somewhat comfortable with them. And then also just having conversations within small groups and things like that were helpful for us, because it's just having little reminders throughout your week and like in your different relationships of what's pleasing to God, and like, you know, it's easy to get lost, but yeah, having those reminders, it was helpful to us.
Yeah, and also just like you said, just being there to support each other. If someone's like feeling particularly weak that day, then the other person's there to support them.
Yeah. So then for young people in our community who are either single and desiring to be in a relationship, or trying to navigate this confusing time of dating, what would be your encouragement to them as they try to figure out what healthy physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, like so many of these things, it's not like the Bible says, you know, thou shalt not go to third base before marriage.
It doesn't, I think Psalms.
You know what? I haven't read, just kidding, I had to for Bible college. It's not in there, no.
Okay.
But like it doesn't necessarily have these even pornography. Like it doesn't say thou shalt not watch pornography. And a lot of young people, these things are kind of normalized, and kind of like, you can maybe save sex for marriage, but all these other things are still on the table, because at least it's not sex.
Yeah.
Like how would you encourage them to arrive at healthy boundaries in a context like this?
Well, my perspective on pornography, I think I think it's bad, even though it doesn't, like you said, specifically say it in the Bible. I think it's like disrespectful to whoever you're dating, or whoever you're, or if you're not dating anybody, whoever you're dating in the future, because you're idolizing women, and you have false idealizations of women. I think it's just disrespectful to women.
And to the person that you're with,
and vice versa, like, because women are the fastest growing demographic for pornography usage. It's dishonoring to the men that they will someday date or marry or whatnot.
And I think I have two things. One of them is something that has always is like one of the things that I like about Nathan is that he's very he has a good sense of self. So he's had conversations with his friends at work where they talking about having sex or whatever, and they question our decision, and it's just he's been able to say well, do you remember your first kiss? Do you remember these things? And it's just something that is a priority to us, and it's something that's very important to us. And that's not to say that we're perfect by any means, but it's just something that we try. And we try to make sure that's something high on our list, I guess. And then something that I've heard, I don't know, from videos and from small groups and things like that is your goal in your relationship is not how far can I get to the line. It's how can I get closer to God. So it's not what is the thing I can do that's closest to the line, but it's not actually at the line. It's well, is it
first base, second base, third base?
Yeah.
Home run?
Yeah. And, well, if would God be pleased in this situation, kind of thing. And yeah, that's really hard because you don't physically see him, you don't like always feel him,
Mm.
but that's something.
But you can physically see and feel your partner, so
Yeah.
what a helpful replacement. No, like,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of like the subconscious line of reasoning is people are longing for something deeper, so they try to find it in an experience with another person that really God has to meet us there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of couples, they want to have sex before marriage and like see if they're compatible before they get married and before they commit. But kind of like what we said before, if you like really love your partner and you really want to do what's best for them, after you get married, those things will work themselves out.
Mm.
Like, I mean, we can't speak for that yet because we're not married yet, but
Yeah. Everything is through the grapevine.
Yeah.
I heard.
yeah, but like other things, like we make it work, even though because we love each other and I want what's best for her. Like you make sacrifices and you make it work.
Yeah. That whole sexual compatibility thing. I mean, it seems to make logical sense that if you're married for 25 years, that's 25 years of practice. You're probably going to get pretty good, even
Yeah.
if you started out really sucking.
Yeah, and I feel like, I don't know, like, it's not a car. Like, people say, like, don't you want to test drive the car and, like, live with the person or, like, sleep with them or whatever? But, like, he's not a car. And so, like, I feel like I won't have anyone to compare with anyways. I don't know what, like, I don't even know
I
what
don't know what
holding...
bad sex or good sex is.
I don't know what holding another person's hand in a loving way feels like, because I've only done that with Nathan.
Mm.
So, like, in a way, I guess that makes it so I have less perspective than some other people who've been in multiple relationships.
Mhm.
But I mean, it works for us, and it feels genuine and everything like that. And I feel like that's not the perspective you should have on a person, is that they're an item that you need to, like, make sure you like. Like, if you like the person, then you will love them, and yeah, that will figure itself out, like what you were saying. Yeah.
Mm. That's brilliant. That's so good.
Yeah, that he's not a car. Good advice.
Well, this whole time I saw Nathan as a car, and I was like, no.
Stupid.
He's a human. But no, just
You're not a transformer.
brilliant how you spoke into what so many people are wrestling with. And so much of what our culture is trying to push on people, and it goes back to that consumer mentality. That's like, find the best thing for yourself, because that's what matters at the end of the day. They have to be the ultimate lover, the ultimate partner, the ultimate whatever for you. And I think what you just shared is so beautiful. And that's why I'm so encouraged by your guys' relationship. I mean, I say as your pastor, but I don't even feel like your pastor. I just feel like your friend and someone who admires you too from a distance, that you guys have a really solid relationship. Obviously, no one's perfect. We don't need to necessarily get into all those things, but just the way that you guys have pursued it and been so open about your values and sought counsel from people like Trevor and Melissa and others, like, that's just amazing. And it's obviously, as a pastor, my hope and prayer that more young people would pursue relationship in the way that you guys did. So thank you both for your commitment to God, your commitment to genuinely loving each other. And I think that as you model your relationship, like with your coworkers and peers, although it's Trinity, so they're all perfect Christians, I mean, just kidding. I think it'll speak so loudly into the confusing, ambiguous dating culture that we find ourselves in. You guys kind of shine a light of God's truth, God's best for what romance could look like. So thank you both. As we close, any last comments that you'd like to say to our viewers, our people who are looking to learn and grow in pursuing godly dating? Anything that you'd like to close on for them?
I think, like, something that just came to my mind that it was kind of blurry, I guess, for when we first started, was like, everyone would always say, like, oh, you need a Christ-centered relationship. Like, but what does that really mean? And I remember I had a conversation with Jesse Chris one time. I was like, are we supposed to be doing devotions, like, every single time I see him? Like, every time we see him, do I have to be praying or doing devotions or, like, listening to worship music? And I would see, like, my other friends in relationships, and I would compare ourselves. And, like, one time our friends, like, broke up, and I was like, are we supposed to break up? Because they broke up because they didn't feel like God was at the center. Are we supposed to do that? And I feel like it's just very difficult. It's easy to compare. It's easy to be like, we're not doing something right and things like that. And I think in terms of like having a godly relationship, like you always want to both be working towards God, and then that will bring you two closer to each other. And then it'll be different for everybody. Like maybe that's, some people love doing devotions together, some people like doing them apart, some people love serving together apart. Like it'll be different for everybody, but reminding each other of God's love and praying together, and lots of, there's like lots of things, and it'll look different for everybody. I think that's something that we've learned, and I guess, found a little bit more clarity on. It's still kind of blurry sometimes, but
That's awesome. Nathan?
I would say don't be afraid to reach out to older couples or older married couples and just ask for advice, because they're there to, especially in the church, they're there to help you learn and guide you, because they were once in your shoes, and they didn't, maybe they had people to help guide them too, maybe they didn't, and they had to navigate it on their own. But yeah, everybody's there to, they're there to help you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The lost art of mentoring, I think that's huge. Yeah, great. Well, again, thank you both for sharing. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I hope this was helpful for you, and that you were able to learn a bit more about this whole concept of dating as Christians, pursuing dating in a godly manner, and that you could learn from Nathan and Brittany's story. And if this was helpful for you, I always encourage you to share it with a friend. If you know people who want to learn more about what it means to date as Christians and how to go about it, I hope this is a helpful resource for them. And like and subscribe if this is helpful content. We're going to keep it coming for you guys. But that's it for today. So much love to you all. Take care.